Hey everyone, Sycra here, and welcome to another Psychological Problems podcast. Today I'm joined by Flavia.
Hello.
And not Bob Meatbag, because he is in Vancouver while we are in Princeton. So, yeah, he's not going to be here for this episode, and I'm not sure, because we're not sure how his housing situation's going on, so... Don't know if he's going to be here for the next one either, but I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope to have Bob back.
Maybe we can have him.
Yeah. I hope to have him back soon. Seems like we got quite a lot of responses to our last podcast, and I thought I'd address it because some people are getting kind of sick of these podcasts, and they're letting me know we want to see more art videos and art tutorials and not so many podcasts.
Yeah.
Well, to that I have to say, I'd like to give that to you, but art tutorials I am trying, but they are a lot more work than podcasts, and I don't necessarily have that much time these days. But also the thing is that, remember, you have the freedom to not listen to these if you don't want to. I kind of like them personally, because I feel like it's an interesting thing to talk about art and psychology and, different subjects. But if this is not your thing, just whenever you see a TSPP or whatever in your inbox, just ignore it. Or, if you really hate it, just unsubscribe, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to be too offended. If you really don't like the podcast thing. Yeah, all right, well, what can you do and move on? But there are also comments about what we were talking about concerning video games. And I think it came across like we were saying, don't play video games at all. And I don't really feel like that was my point. My point is more like this. To do art is to get better at art. Let's say you were in university and you were studying something in business school, let's say accounting. You'd expect, all right, you're going to have classes for maybe 6 hours, 7 hours. Maybe you're going to do studying for 3 hours. So that's about 9 hours of work in that field, studying your whatever. Now, if someone told me, I'm doing this for 9 hours, let's say they're drawing and painting and stuff and studying art. Fine. Drawing and painting for 9 hours. And then I need to take a break because whatever. And I play video games for 3 hours. I wouldn't actually have a problem with that. That's not bad, I think. The problem is the reverse. When, let's say you're not in school, and this is one of the things I like about art school, is it gives you a place to just, you have a time when you're devoting it to art. And you have a place where you have other people doing that too, so it kind of makes you want to do more art. But if you're just, I don't know, spending maybe 8 hours playing video games and then thinking, yeah, okay, I better draw for an hour or two. That's where I have a problem with it. Not necessarily if you didn't want to be professional, that's fine. Just like if there was someone studying accounting on the side for 2 hours just because they had an interest in that would be fine. But when it's like, oh, I want to be a professional whatever artist, and yeah, but I didn't draw today, or I didn't feel like drawing, so
yeah,
it's kind of like a business student saying, oh, I didn't feel like showing up for class, failing the term, not getting their degree,
but being upset about it.
Yeah, and then wondering like, well, why didn't I get a job? It's like, well, you didn't finish, you didn't do your work, you didn't show up,
you didn't put in the effort.
Yeah, and that's really the thing I was mentioning. And then in terms of, I did mention, how I stopped watching TV and removed my TV and my consoles and stopped playing any video games. The reason I did that personally is because I was studying by myself at the time. And I know for me, video games were way too tempting of a distraction. If I had that in my life, I would be taking it. Like if I had the opportunity to play games, I probably would be playing games. So for me, it's like, no, it's better if I just get rid of them entirely. And that worked. For me anyway, that worked. So I'm not really saying you shouldn't do this or that, but more, at least know yourself, at least know, like, am I putting in enough, and what are my expectations? Because that's a huge one, just expectations. When you say, oh, I want to be a concept artist, and I'd like to work for Blizzard or something, it's like, is this
Are you even drawing every day?
Yeah, like, is this real or is this just words? Because it seems, I don't know how prevalent it is in other careers, but it seems to be pretty prevalent with artists that, you know, they'll tell me, I want to be this, and that's okay. I don't want to say can't be that, but I want to be a concept artist. Not like I'm going to say, well, no, that's impossible. But then when they're not working enough, it's really like, do you know how difficult this is? And the other thing is that I think we mentioned how there's many different avenues to an art career. You don't just have to be the best artist. You could be okay with art, but have a really good story and maybe, you know, make webcomics or something and still be okay. You could still do fine.
Yeah. I think art has this mystique about it, this magic still that you don't get as an accountant or a law student or any of the other careers you would choose, because they're quantifiable. So you take an exam, you take your test, and then you get your score. But with art, it's less of a, I don't know, defined thing, so it's easier to stray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the good things for me was, I guess I was in grade 6, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years old or something like that, when I read this Wizard magazine, which was like a comic book magazine, and there was, they had done some statistics, and they said that being a professional comic book artist is more rare than being in the NBA. And so I was like, whoa, there's that few professional comic book artists. But that was probably really good for me, because I realized, like, oh, well, that means I have to be as good at art or as good in art as an NBA player is in basketball.
Yeah, because when they sort of talk about art, it's always like, oh, creative and free-spirited and whatever. And on the other hand, the marketing campaigns treat games and all the distractions as also, oh, creative and artistic and forms of art and everything. And it's easy to sort of blend the things. But when you had it framed as basketball versus art, it's like, oh, these are about the statistics. The time frame and the skill frame is much, much more grounded.
Yeah, actually, there's so many fields that have an overlap in terms of how to become successful. I've listened to writers talk and athletes and just people from various disciplines, and if they're at a high level, when they talk, they sound like, if you just took away what they're saying, like, for instance, if there's a writer and he's like, you know, I spend all my time writing and I write this, and you just replace writing with drawing, it all sounds the same. When I was, I did some, like, I would go to the gym for a while, and I had a trainer, and the trainer I had competed in Mr. Universe or whatever. It's like a bodybuilding competition. But anyway, he did it professionally for a while, and he was talking about the difference between the people who come to the gym for 3 hours a day, and to me that was like, wow, 3 hours a day is a lot to be spending in a gym, and the people who want to compete and who are athletes and who spend at least 7 hours, and they kind of devote their entire life to this thing. And it was like, oh yeah, it's kind of the same with art. You have the people who, oh, you know, you put in a bit and you're better than pretty much most people. I mean, the people who came in and, you know, they would do 3 hours a day, it's like, oh, clearly you are very fit and you're not average, you would, like, for them, they would have like a nice body and they were able to do things and like, yeah, that looks good. But they weren't high level. They were just, yeah, you're good. You're good. You're okay.
And that's your bracket.
Yeah. And if you were in a ordinary grouping of 30 people and you put one of the 3 hour a day in the gym people in, chances are they are the most fit person in that room. If you put them in a room of 100 people, chances are they are the most fit person in that room. Maybe even 1,000 people, they are the most fit person in that room. But when you're talking about an athlete who's a professional, it's more like maybe 1 in a million, or maybe not a million, maybe 500,000, like 1 in 500,000. Is this one person the best in that room? If there were a pretty massive room but had 500,000 people, and that's kind of how it is in terms of how rare it is to be a successful professional artist. And the people that you might bump into in ordinary life, often they don't have the right relationship with art. For instance, let's say you have an art teacher and that's a person you learned art from. Chances are, if they're an art teacher, they might not be a professional artist. They might not actually be at the level where they are a professional, because if they were, they'd probably be doing.
Yeah, those who can do, those who don't teach.
Yeah, and for me, I kind of feel like I'm on the fence of these two. Like, I don't feel like I'm super professional, and I feel like, well, I guess I'm a teacher. I teach a lot now. It's most of what I do is teaching, but at the same time, I don't think I'm an amateur. I feel like, well, if I need jobs, I can get jobs. I have worked professionally. Again, not like I'm the best. I guess if it was like I'm in the NBA, I would be one of those players that no one really knows the name of.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, that guy. Oh, it's like, oh, who are you? Oh.
Sycra?
No one.
Sycra?
No one would buy my jersey or an action figure or a card of me. But
years later, you would be in a collector's build or something.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it's just more like if I came over, and someone had the game on recorded, I could pause it and say, "There I am on the bench."
No. Don't listen to him.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's kind of it on that subject. Know yourself. Super important. All right. So I don't know how related this is, but I was also thinking about how I talked about my story in terms of, okay, I did this much work and then I
studied this.
I studied, and studying is this to me, and I just follow the example of the teacher because, I mean, Flavia, you were talking to me about how...
Yeah, we were outside talking and then just looking at some paintings that you'd done. And then I was looking at the still lives and then wondering, okay, what exactly was your lesson with him like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I took this a few months over the course of 2 years with this teacher, this painter called Zhongru Huang, and he lived in Saskatchewan, which is kind of far, and he would come to Vancouver like once a year for a couple months. So actually the first time I found out about him was, I don't know if I should mention this because maybe my brother would.
No, I think you might have mentioned it before.
Oh.
I think it's safe.
Okay. So my brother's listening because I know sometimes he listens to these things. Sorry about this, but so I saw in one of my brother's sketchbooks, at this time, my brother was working in EA as a game tester, and he draws too. And right now, he's an animator working at some studio. I forget. He jumps from. He works at a few. He's worked at a few different animation studios. But anyway, so when he was in EA, he had his sketchbook out, and I saw he had written a name, and it was the name of this teacher. And I was like, I don't recognize that name. So okay, go online and search him up. And it's like, oh, okay, so he's Canadian, and okay. And so I contacted him and asked him if he teaches lessons, and he's like, yeah, okay. He could teach. And then I went over, and I brought enough supplies because, I mean, I guess I was 26. I want to say 26, maybe 25, 26 is when I started taking lessons with him. Yeah, probably 25. So I had like art equipment. So I brought my stuff, my pencils, charcoal, kneaded eraser, sketchbook and stuff. And basically what he did is he set up, the first thing he did is he told me to put my big, I had like, maybe it's like 18 by 24 inches sketchbook, and those big ones. And he told me, okay, he taught me how to sharpen a pencil, and I have a video on that, traditional drawing techniques, I think it's called, where I teach how to sharpen a pencil, the way he taught me. And then so I set up my sketchbook like vertically, and then he taught me how to shade, and then he's like, okay, shade this entire paper.
Yeah.
So it took 3 hours, and
to shade a paper.
yeah, just the whole
Exciting.
thing. Yeah, the whole thing was just shade the paper an even tone, and there shouldn't be any white marks, and it should be completely even, and that's it. And it sounds, I don't know if that sounds easy or hard to you, but
I don't know, it sounds pretty grueling. And I wonder like how many people still do this type of thing, because I haven't, other than you, I haven't really heard anyone that seeks out a teacher, like jumps on a teacher just at them, oh, look it up, like being so proactive, and then 3 hours shading a paper.
yeah, so
it's like, sure, I'll do it. No, I know I would be put off.
So I guess in that way, it was, okay, I did what the teacher said. So I did 3 hours. But I also knew, okay, I was doing it in this method, which again, I've shown in the traditional drawing techniques video. But I was doing this method, and I realized my arm was getting tired after like maybe 10 minutes. And I knew I have to shade this entire paper. So if my arm is tired, I'm more likely going to slip up. So I have to make sure my arm can last enough to shade this entire paper. And it's...
It sounds like an anime.
Yeah.
Oh, be like this hold your pose for 3 hours, and then, I'm dying.
Yeah, so because of that, I started paying a lot of attention to what is the most comfortable position my arm can take that I will be able to get through this. And by the end, my arm was killing me, but I shaded the paper and it was fine. And after that one thing, that one session, I knew how to shade. It's kind of like the Matrix with Neo. I know Kung Fu. It's just, I can shade now
because...
because...
but it didn't take him 3 hours.
Yeah. I can shade now because that was hell. And then the next times were things like he'd set up a still life of like, he'd put a box and then fruit, maybe like an apple, an egg, and whatever.
Fruit.
Stuff like that. Yeah, an egg. Oops. Well, I meant fruit, comma, ... an apple, whatever. Eggs are fine. Fruits of the chicken.
Chicken, yeah. They grow on chickens.
Yeah. And then, okay, so yeah, like he would set up a still life, and he was like, okay, draw that. And then it's like, okay, so it's, I guess I'm following his advice because he said draw that, but it's a lot of thinking, like, okay. And then okay, so I'd do it, and then he would say, like, another time he set up a different still life. Then he's just like, do you think it's boring? And I was like, well, I don't really like drawing still lifes that much, but I mean, I'm here to learn. So, and then he's like, yeah, think of it like a story. And, let's just, I don't remember the exact, let's say it was a cantaloupe and a pear. And he's like, yeah, so the cantaloupe's a big brother and the pear's the little sister or something. And then you look at it and you look at the still life and it's just objects, just fruit and, did I get that right? No, a pepper is not a fruit.
Pepper? I thought you said pear.
A pear?
Yeah.
Oops, a pear.
You got it right.
Okay, good. Yeah, and then you look at it and it's like, I guess if you think of it that way, it does form a relationship. It kind of feels like the pear is looking at the cantaloupe and the cantaloupe is proud and protective over the pear or something like that. And then I would, and then he would go and do his own drawing. Like that was it. That the reason he was teaching me is because he stipulated that he would tell me what to do, but he wouldn't teach me. Like he's not going to be around too much. He's going to be doing his own paintings. Like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So then he would come like after an hour and he'd look at it, and he'd point at an area and too dark, and then go away. Like, okay. And stare at it. Stare. Because I couldn't see that it was too dark. He would say it's too dark, and it looked okay to me. So I'd stare at it, and I'd stare at the still life, and I would keep looking and look at different areas and squint my eyes and try and figure out the values until I could kind of see what he was saying. And then eventually when it started looking too dark, then all the other values started moving. Like it's like the values were shifting to meet. Like, oh, if that's what he means. This isn't the right value, but if this is the right value and I lighten it, then that means this part needs to be lightened and this, but then it was like my eyes leveled up. So again, if I tell that story, I would just say, I just listened to what he was saying.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of like
Extra.
try and figure it out yourself.
It's an entire process, not just, I did what the teacher said.
Yeah, so, I mean, I feel bad for just stating that, I just follow the teacher, because, I mean, I think this way, and I have all these little phrases that I have, like submit, study, surpass, and stuff like that, that to me, it feels like, well, that's all you need. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Just drawing is everything.
Whoa.
That's all you need to know. Drawing is everything. I think, and to me it is. To me, I was thinking about this is not a good phrase. I don't know what to call them.
Okay.
But, okay, so let's say you needed to build and paint a house. Drawing is like building the house, and painting is like painting the house.
I knew you were going there. You went there. You did it.
It's not very elegant, but it's kind of how I think of it. Like, drawing doesn't mean you take a pencil and you have a paper and you draw lines and stuff. To me, drawing, you can draw with a brush, you can draw with paint, you can draw with, I imagine you could even draw with clay in a way. It's more just, to me, drawing is laying down the correct proportions, placement, perspective, anatomy, form, construction, values, I guess. And then maybe, okay, let's leave values out. But to that point. So you got forms, you got planes and everything. Values are going to be there anyway. But let's just say there's that. And then painting is just, okay, values and color and edges. Edges, value, color, texture.
I'm just thinking about what comments you're going to get now. Like, you're shitting on painting. Whoa.
Painting?
Painting.
I'm not shitting on painting.
Oh, it's just values.
It's not just, no, values, color, edges, texture, brushwork.
Yeah.
Which is texture.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's not.
because drawing is the most important thing. It's like, this is where the thing goes. Kind of like if you were, if you had a patient, right? Again, this is the same as a building the house, painting the house. I just want to say another one because this one's better. Maybe. So drawing is like, you look at a person and you're going to make them look different. Okay. Drawing is a plastic surgery and painting is a makeup. Is that better?
Marginally. It's okay.
If you're good at painting, it's like being good at putting makeup on.
Yeah,
All right.
consider how many people do well with just makeup, though.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a good face to work on and you put the makeup
Even
on,
if you don't, but the problem is what happens in the morning.
but in the ones that are like really bad plastic surgery, like botches, where the eye used to be in the eye socket and now it's near the nose or something.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, eyes are near noses, but I mean near the nostril. God damn it. All right, never mind. And I'm sorry if anyone is a victim of a botched plastic surgery. I do not mean to be insensitive.
Yeah.
Humor is often insensitive.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. I am
Awkward.
not wise today.
Awkward moment over.
Yeah.
On to the next.
I have 2 Y's in my name. Alright.
Just made me choke on the water.
Alright. So my point was, when you have a good foundation, it's easier anyway to add the rest. And because of that, that's why I feel like most good art teachers who, if you want to paint from imagination, most of them talk about drawing first. And in an atelier method, this is kind of how you do it. You start out with drawing like bar drawings, just learning proportion and placement. Then you do charcoal drawings where you do value studies. And until you can draw pretty much perfectly from a reference, you're not allowed to draw from life.
Why do you have to do charcoal first?
Because charcoal is kind of like painting. It's kind of like oil painting because you have a very good, depending on the charcoal, but usually you have a pretty good range with charcoal. I actually think charcoal is a lot harder than painting because the tool of charcoal, the stick or brick or whatever you're using, it's very difficult, especially if you're using like willow charcoal.
Oh boy.
There's a draft, your dust goes everywhere, and just like I find it pretty difficult anyway. But you got a good value range, and it causes you to think about the mark you're about to put down. And that's important in painting as well. Like you're thinking about, okay, I'm gonna put down a brushstroke, but before I do, I have to consider what I'm gonna put down, how I'm gonna put it down, how much pressure, how much paint needs to be on the bristles and stuff, and then boom, you put it down. But it requires thinking, so it's a pretty good lead-in to painting. But yeah, I mean, you get the drawing down, and then you worry about painting. But there is a case where you don't have to do this, and that is when you're not drawing from imagination, but rather you just go one for, like, let's say you used a projector and a grid, and you're just, the drawing you trace or you map out perfectly and you just copy it down, then yeah, you don't have to think about drawing. The drawing is done for you, and then you will always be dependent on reference, but if you're okay with that, then yeah, just think about painting. And I would say if someone really I just like painting, I don't really want to do drawing, it's like, okay, work from references alone, because that's not that hard to learn. Maybe a few months to a year, you can, I think, learn how to, I mean, if you're dedicated, you can learn that, how to make paintings that look good.
Yeah, I think the weird things happen when you are trying to create a piece from imagination and you're using reference, like bits of reference. Oh, a cape from this photo and a hand from this photo, but the perspective doesn't really match and you don't know enough about drawing to put them all together in a plausible way.
Yeah, like that's what, and that is like deviating already from the reference. Like,
Yeah.
the more you want to, because you need some degree of, I wouldn't say drawing necessarily, but the ability to see form you need when you're painting as well, so you can interpret it correctly.
Yeah.
But the more you want to deviate from the reference, the more you need to use drawing, in my opinion, my humble opinion. I think that's what I've seen so far. So I could be wrong, and if you know better or know differently, then I'm available for education. But so far it seems the more you want to go away from reference, the more this drawing is needed. But I do feel like sometimes people talk about wanting to be something, but really they want to do, like, for instance, maybe this is you, and you wanted, let's just say you wanted to do illustrations for Magic the Gathering, and you just like things looking, like you look at it, it's like, wow, that looks like a thing. And maybe you look at artwork and you go to a gallery and you really like the ones that they're painted and they're painted well and they look like the objects they're supposed to be. You might just really like painting. It could just be that your calling is just, oh, I set up a painting, maybe I set up my subject, set up a model, whatever, and you paint them. And I mean, that's not too hard. It does take practice, and of course it takes years to master, to get better at. Probably a lifetime to, not a lifetime, but decades to master, let's say. But it's not like super hard. But drawing is so much more hard in terms of the amount of time you need. I feel bad for people who, well, never mind, because I fall into this category. Okay, let me think about this and then say it differently. Okay, I wish art was taught to people younger, like basic drawing techniques. I wish they were taught to kids who are like 5 and 6 years old and around that age. Even younger would be cool, but just when language is being taught, I wish music and drawing were also involved. Like, you learn how to speak a language and write a language. Yeah. You learn how to play an instrument or hear notes, and you learn how to draw. Probably other things too, but I really feel like it's important to learn that, because the thing with learning a language is you learn it, at least if it's your first language, you learn it when you have nothing to say, really. Maybe you're hungry, you need to shit, something like that. You have the most basic things that you need, but you learn it when, you don't have anything to say. But because of that, you don't worry about it. It's just under your belt. I know how to do this. And I think drawing is something like the ability to see proportion, perspective, basic draftsmanship. This is stuff that like kids could learn at a very young age. It's probably as complicated as learning a language.
It's not just a matter of capacity. I feel it's a matter of kind of necessity. Because if you think about writing and speaking, and these are all regarded as needs. Yeah. You need to know how to write. You need to be literate. You need to know how to speak this or that language and stuff. There's a lot of emphasis on, you're bilingual, you're whatever. And it's like, art is pretty much the same thing. Yeah. It's another basic skill.
Yeah, I think so. And what's difficult, though, is because that's not the way things work, and certainly it wasn't like that for me, because we're not really taught, or at least most of us, maybe there are some lucky few who were taught at a very, very young age. But because that's not the case, and this only gets worse as you get older, you have more to say, but much more limited vocabulary if you don't know how to draw. So if you're 10 and you don't know how to draw, you might have some things to say. Maybe it's like, oh, this show that I watched is really cool and I like the characters and I want to draw the characters. Or I like dinosaurs and I want to draw dinosaurs. It's like, okay. But maybe, you know, if you talk to a 20-year-old, they really want to draw, I don't know, the feeling of loneliness that they're experiencing currently after a breakup or something. I don't know. Maybe there's more to it. But it's a case of when you're learning how to draw and you also have things to say, it's very easy to get these two mixed up. And that would be really hard if you're learning a language at the same time as trying to write a novel in that language, expressing your deepest feelings.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I had this too, where I have these ideas of what I wanted to paint, but I didn't have the skill to do it. And then I would try to do it, but fail and get depressed and feel miserable. And then it's like, okay, that didn't work out.
Wouldn't this be also because by the time you have deeper things to say, there's already this big gap that you are, as an adult, you're aware between what you need to be in terms of skill and where you are. But if you're doing it like, okay, I'm a kid, I'm 12, I'm drawing poorly, but the things that I need to, my tasks are simple. And you don't get like beaten down or depressed or demotivated and stuff. Oh, yeah, well, I'm drawing an apple. I'm getting better at drawing an apple, but all I need to do is draw an apple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it does, because I had this experience when I was learning Chinese and I was trying to talk to people who were native speakers of Chinese, and it's like, you feel so stupid because you can say the most basic phrases, which I don't really remember anymore, but you can say like really basic things, but you can't say anything deep or profound because you just don't have the vocabulary for it. So you just feel and almost embody a more stupid thing, like a state where you're so limited. And I see this with people who learn English late in life and then maybe they immigrate to Canada or wherever, you know. But because English isn't their first tongue, they're slow and they stumble with words. And there's this appearance, like sometimes people will laugh like, oh yeah, oh, don't you sound funny and stuff. But you don't know how good they are in their own language. You don't know how intelligent they actually are.
Yeah.
They're not coming across as what they really are. And perhaps if you were on their turf, you would realize in a hurry just the difference.
Yeah, you'd get like, in terms of immigrants, you could get like cardiologists and well-educated people, well-read people in their country and stuff. And then when they come over and then they're like reduced to because fluency is pretty much equated to capability, to competence.
Yeah, definitely. And it just reinforces it because it's like, oh, this person works at a gas station, and you talk to them and it's like, hello, sir. Would you like some beef jerky? We've got some stuff, and then it's like, all right. So maybe that guy is back home. He's a doctor, but due to just the, I guess, what would you call it? Clumsiness with the language. It's just clumsy that it's like, oh, you seem to not be this, I guess. So I guess there's that. That was a huge tangent. We went
as
from
all tangents
art.
Yeah, I think your initial point was that you talk in like compressed sayings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Kind of like bits of Chinese wisdom.
So I want to talk about this other thing, and that's this thing about teaching and how much a student is expected to know, and also who you're learning from. And this has to do with sort of me being where I am and seeing other people, some of them, just people I've met and talked to behind the scenes, so I kind of I've got a sense of how they think, and understanding how much they know compared to what is expected of the student. So, for instance, there may be people who teach anatomy, and they teach it in a lot of detail. Okay, so it's like every muscle, every bone, all the functions, and someone just learning, someone who doesn't know anything about drawing, might come to that and then look at it and be like, oh shoot, I need to learn all of that. Or maybe, I mean, the same thing happens with anatomy books where you have like all the muscles diagrammed. And
it's an entire compendium.
Yeah, it's like, okay, oh shit, I need to learn all of that. And that is learning anatomy. That is what it means. Or perspective. Like, oh, I need to learn this. And it seems super complicated. But because the teacher knows it really well, it seems like, well, but I guess I'm supposed to know this. So here's a bit of a behind the scenes for some people, I guess. Maybe some people are already aware of this. But the teachers usually, almost always, don't know all that. Like, they kind of learn it, and then they make the lesson, and then they teach it.
Yeah.
It's I studied this, like, for the past week.
They review
these few muscles.
Yeah.
And then I designed a lesson, and now I'm making the lesson, and okay, now I'm teaching it. But the student just gets, I need to know this. No, you don't. You don't necessarily need to know all of that. Because a lot of what happens for artists, like, really, is this. You draw a ton. And what happens is, as you draw, and this is why I really, really talk about why drawing is important. There's like the unconscious part of your brain and the conscious part. The conscious part is the one that has like, I want to draw this. And the unconscious part is the part that lets you do that. And you have so much experience drawing that you formed a bridge between these two sides where it's not like, oh, I see images in my head, but I can't get them on the page. It's more like, this is connected. So it's like, oh, I see images in my head and I can get it on the page. And that comes from drawing. But you draw so much that you build this intuition, this sense of, I don't need to really know so much. I just start drawing, and there's a feeling like, this kind of looks like, I feel like this looks right. And I feel like this goes here. And maybe you have learned anatomy, but it doesn't mean you've learned every muscle. It's more like, oh, I know the major muscles, and they look about right. And that is much more based off muscle memory and intuition than it is off theory. I suppose a disclaimer is if you were going to do hyper-realistic stuff, you probably would need to know a lot more muscles. But usually when people do that, they use reference.
Yeah.
So it kind of doesn't matter anymore. So the other thing is you don't need to know all of that stuff. You, like, let's say you wanted to be a comic artist, right? And, okay, you want to draw cool comic book characters. Well, they have muscles, yes. But you just need the general muscles, and then the rest you can kind of bullshit. And some artists might say, oh, you shouldn't teach people that it's okay to bullshit. However, why not? Like, it is the way things work.
That's the practice.
Yeah, like, the reality is, you're not showing your work to a bunch of anatomists. Anatomists? Is that right?
Yeah.
Sounds weird. Okay, anatomists. You're not showing your work to a bunch of anatomists and having them, stroke their beards or beards. Even the women. Women anatomists are going to be pissed off in the comments.
Yeah.
I shave. I wax.
I use IPL.
I got rid of my beard. Anyway, what you have is just people. Mostly, it's just people who are probably not even artists. And what they look at is, do I get what this means? Like, you look at a character like the Hulk, and tons of people draw him, but he's not anatomically correct. Not just because he's green, but, like, when you grow, when you get bigger, your wrists don't, like, when you get more muscles, your wrists don't get bigger. But his do. it's not.
So they should give him dainty wrists.
Well,
if they want it to be technically correct.
Yeah, I mean, he'd look. Of course, it's a
but his
character.
Skeleton expands too.
Yes, his skeleton expands, but when you get that much muscle mass, you don't just look like the same, but a different proportion. Because he's not just because his traps get humongous and stuff.
Yeah, his traps get humongous, but his head isn't that much bigger.
Exactly. Yeah. See, when it's artistic license. It's just I know enough to make this character. Like, does the character look strong though? Like, you don't have all the muscles in place. You have most of them, and then there's bullshit muscles. But does he look strong? Yes. Then you've accomplished your mission. You don't need to know everything.
Oh boy, is this gonna get misconstrued?
Yeah, Sycra, he told me you don't need to know anything.
Yeah.
When you draw, first he told me, don't learn anatomy.
You don't need any.
Don't need it. Don't need perspective. And never use reference.
Never
use reference. Not
don't
even
play
one.
Video
you
games.
don't even touch the video game.
Never.
Don't even touch it. You don't even think about it. If you think about playing a video game, forget it. You want to be an artist? You want to be anything.
Yeah.
Won't be one drop of success for you. But anyway, so it's much more important that you have enough to say what you want. And with some of the people that really know, like they study the muscle and then make the video, study the muscle, make the video, study the muscle, make the video, look at their imaginary work. Doesn't necessarily look that great.
Yeah.
It's more about you're building a skill. So if your main thing is look at reference and then make a drawing based on the reference, it's gonna look like that. Like that's where you put your energy into it. That's why usually, like, if you draw comics, or if you see people who draw comics, they're probably good at that, but it doesn't mean they're great at brushwork, for instance. You might see someone who does beautiful landscape paintings, but it doesn't mean they could draw even a simple manga character that looks good. I mean, because we talk about draw, and there's this, look at a reference and copy, but I mean, like, from your imagination. So I guess that's the other thing, is just there's this idea that students need to know all of this stuff. But the teachers don't know all of that stuff either. Like, for me, I know probably the most about a subject just before I make the video on that subject. Because that's like...
You've done your homework.
This is the most I know and I will ever know about this subject.
Do you think it's also sort of like a generation gap when you... Like, the equivalent of a generation gap when you have people who are experienced artists thinking about what a beginner should learn?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that's a lot of it, and that's why I don't think I'm very good at teaching beginners anymore. Because I'm just so far removed from it. I feel like you're probably the best when you're teaching someone 1 or 2 levels beneath you, and not someone who's like 20 levels beneath you, because it's very hard to remember what it feels like to be at that stage.
And I think you might make up a lot of things of how it should have been, or in hindsight, this was what I needed, or what I wish I'd known and stuff, and it becomes sort of muddled.
Yeah.
How did I actually learn versus how do I think somebody should learn?
Yeah, because a lot of... Like, I had this thing where I talked to a student, this was a few years ago, and I told him, like, okay, you could draw this way and get very good in a year or 2 years, and this is what it's going to take. And then I spelled the whole thing out to him, and he was like, I'm like, or you could completely ignore what I'm saying and just do your own thing, your own way, and it's going to take you like 10 times longer or 5 times longer. And he's like, I know the other one's the way I should do it, but I think I'd rather just do the second way. And it's like, yeah, me too. Like, that's kind of what I did.
Isn't that what I told you too?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nah, thanks.
And so when I tell people like drawing is important, one of the reasons I keep harping on about it is because I guess for me, I didn't treat it like it was that important for a long time. Like I like drawing. I always like drawings. But I didn't know like, oh, you have to spend like tons of time drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing different things and not just rendering, or else you just get practice in rendering. But this is also based on what I want to do with art. Like, because when I think about art and, oh, here's an artist or here's a student, they're coming to me. I tend to, and this is probably bad, but I tend to think about where I was when I was at their stage. And for me, I've always wanted this, I guess it's pretty full of myself to be wanting this, but I wanted to draw and paint whatever I wanted really well, like from imagination. I didn't like reference. I didn't want to be tied to reference. And that's kind of bad in a way if the person you're learning or you're teaching doesn't understand that's where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So I should say this. Like, I treat it like if someone, because most people I ask the students like, what do you want? And a lot of it is I want to be able to draw stuff from imagination. I want to draw comics or concept art or stuff, but it's mostly based on imagination. And even if you say, well, look up reference, and then often you'll get, yeah, I know I was supposed to use reference, but I just did it from imagination. And it's like, oh, I get it. I get what you want. I want that too. I never wanted, oh yeah, hey, I can draw if you give me a photo. But that requires a ton of drawing experience to get that. Whereas if you were the type of person who, what you really like is things to look like what they're supposed to look like I want to be able to draw a pot and it looks like a pot. Or I want to draw my neighbor's dog and it looks like my neighbor's dog. It's like, oh, you could do this with a completely different method. You could just learn proportions and like grids and then break down grids and learn sight sizing, and that's the ability where not ability, but you just draw the thing at the same size as your reference, or as it appears, and then like there's a bunch of different techniques. So for me, I always assume people want to draw from imagination, and
yeah, because I think there's so many different ways your words get interpreted based on what somebody thinks beforehand, before listening to you. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, so you said this, right? And then, no, I didn't. No, but wait, no, but there's more to this.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of hard to... It's very daunting thinking about just how much is required to actually teach.
Yeah.
Especially teaching strangers. Like, that's super difficult to...
Yeah, because you don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And it's so... You could mislead them very easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a biggest thing. And just, like, every word I say, it's like... Because if you have a student one-on-one, you can say something and kind of get a sense of them and know, okay, they want to do this, so this is why I'm saying this. And this is why I'm not saying this other thing.
Yeah, it's the same as therapy, pretty much. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we do the dual mentorships, pretty much the entire first session is spent getting a sense of who the person is, where they're coming from, what was their childhood like who are they?
Mm-hmm.
And then, let's think about, is there any problem? How would work best to tackle it? What do you want to talk about? Where are you coming from?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same for art, I feel. What do you want to do with art? It's a language, but what do you want to say with it?
Yeah. And then it gets very hard when what is supposed to be taught is... Because it's hard for the teacher to come up with something that's going to work for everyone, but it's also hard when the student's trying to dictate what they need to learn. Like, I want you to teach me this. It's like, you could look at that and say, you don't need that though. Like,
I think I fall into that category.
oh really?
Yeah, I think I come with a too rigid of an agenda into learning. Like I think, oh no, I need to learn this, and then sometimes it's like, wait a minute, that wasn't it.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't. I think I've gotten a bit better in recognizing what I need, but I do think I kind of drive the conversation a bit too much.
Yeah, and sometimes I guess it's necessary to go the hard way,
Yeah.
especially for some people. They just need
Yeah.
to suffer. It's like, you need to figure this out yourself. You need to know what it's like. And this is kind of true with painting, where, and this is also one reason why I encourage people to spend money on not just getting free content. Because there is this thing where, for me anyway, it was this like, oh, you save up money and you buy paints and then you waste them because you don't know how to paint. And then you realize, God damn it.
I need to learn how to
Like,
paint.
yeah, like it becomes
I can't
much
be
more,
wasting this because I'm wasting my own suffering.
Like you suffered for it in a way. So it's a difference between that and just because if you just read a book and it's like, oh, this is how to do this and this is how to do that, you might not know why. And I suppose it could be the same for I think we're talking about diabetics and what it's like for them once they become a diabetic.
Yeah, and how hard it is to manage versus, oh, you could prevent this.
Yeah, it's very hard to get it, to imagine what it would be like to have a really bad health condition.
Yeah.
As opposed to what it's like when you have it and then it's like, oh, now I'm fucked if I don't do this, but I know how bad things can get.
Yeah.
So I guess in those cases it's worse because in art you're basically just wasting years.
You're wasting years, but those years could be important to you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're not getting, maybe you want to enjoy art in your prime or whatever. And for me, I feel like when you were talking about the getting things the hard way and learning the hard way and sort of making your own mistakes, it feels like it's a lot about mental ownership of my process, mental ownership of whatever's gone into my brain, whatever I've learned, I own it. Like, oh, I've learned from my mistakes, I've gained experience, and it's my own experience. Whereas if I think about, you might be coming with the best advice, the greatest, I don't know, pattern to reaching my goal. But because I don't understand it, my steps will be shaky.
Yeah.
Because I'm not confident in it, I won't be going at full speed and I'll feel crippled and I'll feel, because I know I felt this. And I feel this even when it's like, oh, study the traditional way. What? I get scared and I'm not performing at my best. But that's not I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a good attribute. Feeling
like I just wanted to tell certain people, including you, like, just trust me. I know I've been through this. I know what this is. I know how to resolve this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sucks when you study and figure something out, and then you know the answer. You know, like, oh, how to make this look good. It's like, okay, I know that now. And then you see someone who's struggling, and it's like, you just know, like, I could solve this for you, or I could just, it's this. This is the answer. I know it. I know.
I get the same way when people talk about, like, oh, I've got this issue and this whatever. It's like, I know what, but you have to go through it. You have to process this thing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating for whoever's watching because they feel kind of helpless, but.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think what I'm still trying to teach has turned more from necessarily like, oh, this is how to draw an eye, and it's become much more about trying to figure out and understand the student, or for the student to understand themselves.
Yeah.
Because I was mentioning this thing of how I wish things were taught to kids when they were young, like drawing. Because then they would learn the grammar and the vocabulary without the need to say stuff.
Yeah.
But for someone like, let's say you're 30 and you are struggling with art and struggling with drawing, because sometimes I feel like our podcasts are just showing the problem instead of fixing it. So here's my fix, or a fix. So let's say you're struggling with drawing, you're trying to figure it out, but you also have things to say, and you're trying to make these drawings. What I would really recommend is find a way to split these two. Compartmentalize, as all multiples should.
Yeah, as all multiples should. And I'm thinking, it's like, oh, if I was in a position to give advice, it would be the opposite. No, find a way to combine them so that you could do both at the same time.
I suppose, but the reason I recommend splitting them, because perhaps combining them is good as well, or maybe that works for some people.
Yeah.
But the reason I like to split them is because I suppose it depends what your personality type is.
Yeah.
But for me, I want to impress. I want to get a good result. Like, I want to, either the person's happy or moved, or like technically they think the picture is good, or it made them feel good. Something like that. And then if I tried drawing and practicing in the same image, if I tried drawing something that really means something to me and I practice, then first of all, I'm disappointing myself because I wanted this to be cool, or I wanted this to be moving, or I wanted this to be a genuine expression of my emotions, or of a story or something, but it's not. And it's just beating the point home that I do not know what I'm doing. And that leaves me feeling like a loser. I feel like I suck. I can't do it. And then if someone sees it, even if they like it, there's always this feeling of, yeah, but that's not it. That's not what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Like it's there. Like, you're getting a sliver of something, and then it's not. And so because of that, I feel like it's better to draw stuff I don't necessarily care about that much. And then have that be my practice stuff. It's like, whatever, it sucks, I don't care. It's just a random whatever, I don't care. And then have the stuff I do care about more to myself until I'm good enough that I can, okay, here it is. And in some cases, so for me, it's my secret sketchbook that I have shown, but I haven't shown again. So there's still lots of stuff. But it's this thing of the stuff that's really important to me. I don't really feel like showing people.
Yeah. Because
it would piss me off if I showed someone and they just, I don't care. It's like, God damn it! No, I wish I could take it back. Like, just unsee that. Give it back to me. I didn't want to show you anyway. I don't know. That's somewhat.
I think it really is dependent on what your triggers are. Because when you were talking about it, it's like most of these things don't apply to how I think, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I have the opposite issue where I fail miserably at practicing unless I'm doing it incorporated into a piece that I care about. Mm-hmm. Or that I like, you've seen me do it, and what I usually do is I go about just noodling and fixing pretty much irrelevant things until I like what it looks like overall, and then I have something that I want to look at while I'm practicing a thing, or some layouts or some details or whatever. Like, it needs to be integrated for me, and for you it needs to be split apart for it to work.
Do people even factor in for you? Like the audience, or?
Only after, like, the thing is, after I've finished an image, if I'm not happy with it and people see it and they like it, it's taken me many, many years, but I have gotten to the point where I can sort of acknowledge that they like it. Not, like, if they say the image is good and I don't believe it's good, my opinion of it will sort of trump their, okay, so you think it's good, I don't think it's good, I know better, whatever. But if they say they like it, I do care about that. It's like, good for you that you like it. Or if they don't like it, it's like, well, I don't like it either, so that's fine. It's not crushing to me. But that only happens after I've finished the image. While I'm painting or drawing or whatever, I'm only in I zone out, kind of. I'm in my own head. Even if I'm working on a commission, even if I'm doing it for someone, I have the goal in my mind. Oh, I want to achieve this, and this person who commissioned me likes this sort of aesthetic and whatever, and I'm going to make it like this. But not, oh my god, if they see it and they don't, that only, it's like after I've printed it, it's like, oh my god, what if they don't like it?
Yeah, but you still get that afterwards.
Yeah, but it's so much a certainty for me that they won't like it that I don't take it into account much. It's like, oh, they're gonna hate it anyway. It's pretty much, yeah, the die is cast. No.
And you don't think, like for you, it doesn't reflect on you.
I guess it does, but I think I'm shitty, so what? Like, nothing changes. My own opinion of myself is so bad that there's nothing that, it's like, if I showed you a picture and you said, oh, you really like it, and whoa, it's your favorite picture ever in the whole wide world, and whatever, it's like, good for you, that's about you, that's not about me. And same if you say you really hate it, it's like, that's about you, not about the picture. My opinion of the picture is the same. My pictures suck, I suck, whatever, self-esteem, very low. So I'm kind of prey to different issues than you are.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people getting triggered, maybe we should mention the last video.
You made a video, all right.
Yeah, so I did this redraw of an elf character, and I got a lot of comments concerning.
Yeah, you aimed at a lot of buttholes, it seems. They got very, very offended, it seems.
Some people were not, but some people really were, and it was very like, oh, okay. So I had some comments about elf concept. Why is it called an elf concept and not ogre? Because it looked more, or an orc. It looked more like an orc.
No, I think the thing was, why is it called a concept? Because you were doing an illustration.
Yeah. So the reason it was called elf concept is just because the original was called elf concept. That's it. Like I made the original image and I posted it, and it was elf concept.
Elf concept.
Just one image, one illustration.
That's not even full body.
Yeah. It's not like you're right. If you were like, oh, that's not a concept, it's like that's it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. That's why it's in quotes. Like you'll see the thing is in elf concept. Sure. So there's that. And then the next biggest concern was I changed her body type. Her body type. So at first she was strong, and then I made her into this skinny thing. And so the reason I like doing draw it again videos, or not videos necessarily, but draw it again things, are because when I do critiques of students and I fix their image and I do a draw over, a paint over, I don't really know what they want to do. Like I have to guess, like what, or maybe interpret where they're coming from, what they intended. And then I'll try and teach, or I will just focus on a thing like, okay, you need to work on values. So I'm going to talk about values. Maybe I'll lose the mood. Maybe I'll lose the character that you have, but I will at least help you with values, or try to. So with my own pieces though, I know what I was going for. Like I don't remember exactly what I was doing, and all that. But I do know, like, I know I wanted it to be cool, and the parts that are like, yeah, she looked muscular, it's like, that was not on purpose. Yeah. That was just me not knowing how to draw. Like, the thing is, if I could, I would have made it like the after picture in the before. I just didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going for. It wasn't even so much like, wow, this is what I want to show. It's just, oh, if I had my skill and I gave it to my young self who didn't have that skill, what would have happened? And that's what would have happened. More or less. Like, of course, it's still not there. Again, I said, like, maybe in 9 years I'll be better. I really hope so. And then it's like, oh, okay, that was crap, and here's how to properly do it. But yeah, that's a thing. But going to the idea of political correctness, Shouldn't touch this.
No, you should. I feel like it's just this again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there was someone who was very offended and said, "Oh, every girl who sees this will have their self-esteem down the drain and everything." And I happen to be a girl, and I happen to have no issues with body proportions. It's like it's a matter of appeal. If you think of aesthetics and curves and markers for appeal, these are all it. It doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have that, oh, you're not like that drawing, oh no, you should go hang yourself or something. It's like, I feel very sad when I read comments like this. I feel very kind of like losing hope a bit. It's like, oh, why are we getting into this? This is about art. Why does this have to be I feel like it's a reduction. Oh, reduced to a topic about, oh, this is sexualized, oh, this is this, oh, this is the body, oh, the head is bigger than the waist. So?
Yeah.
It's artistic choice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't need to be talked about too in depth because it's probably not worth it.
What were your thoughts on it?
Well, okay, so I do, on one hand, I actually see the point of people who point out these things. So in the sense that, okay, let's say I just created a body type that everyone does that is unrealistic. Yeah, I'll agree with you. Not you, but the person who fielded the criticism. I concur that it is unrealistic, and it's also a more commonly found in art body type. On the point that it influences people, like women, young kids, or whatever, young girls, and they feel like they need to achieve that body type, again, I can see that point. I can see, okay, yeah, this is contributing to a culture that promotes this as the ideal. But that's about as far as it goes, because the thing is, the way I see it is probably very different than the way the person's seeing it, or the people who do have a problem with it. I do think it's more generic, but again, it's a concept of a thing I did a while back.
It's an elf.
Yeah, it's
like,
an. It's
it's a skimpy outfit.
I think I did mention elf. Like it's not. This is not a good design. I think I mentioned that. Like I just didn't know what to do. But in terms of making someone attractive or sexualized or objectifying, I have to say, and this might bother some people, but in art, I think that's okay. I think it's okay to objectify in art.
I agree. Because you have art, on the other hand, there's room enough for everything in art. There's room enough for deeply, I don't know, disturbing or super personal or whatever. And there's also room for hypersexualized and objectifying images. Yeah. You just choose which ones you take in.
Yeah, I as someone who draws, I draw a bunch of different things. So for people who say, this is an unoriginal character, or this is just the same body type everyone does, I have drawn different body types. So I'm not affected by that. You can't say, oh, you don't draw, you only draw these super skinny waisted people and they look like they're anorexic or whatever. It's like, no, that's not true. With faces, I draw a bunch of different ethnicities. I draw a bunch of different features. I draw a bunch of just a lot of things. I draw androgynous people. I draw just, it's not like, to me, that's not it doesn't stick to me anyway, personally. It's like, oh, you only draw one? No, I don't just draw one type.
When I think of it, it's pretty sad to have to justify, oh, but I draw this, but I draw. It's like, don't we have better things to talk about?
Well, the other thing is that, so there's that side. But then, as I said, I don't really have a problem with objectification or sexualization in art.
Yeah.
I have a problem with it in real life, but in art, it's like, not really. And then, in terms of, well, you're just copying this, you're just forwarding this idea that women need to be this or women need to be that. No, I don't think so. I think art reflects life, and I think we show what we do see. And for instance, okay, a person reaches sexual maturity maybe by what, 12-ish, 13? 13, 14, 12, 11, some people who are early bloomers. So would you say that person is responsible? I imagine most people would agree, not really. They're not really developed enough to know what's what. However, chances are by that point, what that person is attracted to has been formed either by society or their culture, or maybe trauma, or maybe just life events. Okay, so if you're in a society where certain things are considered attractive, chances are, and not just in general, because I mean, you could, for instance, you could be a guy who's attracted to men. All right, fine. You could be attracted to women. Now, you don't get a choice so much after that. It's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of what stuck. There is room for alteration, I feel, but it kind of stuck. But let's say I was really into, I don't know, let's say furries. I was into furries and I was into gay furries. And it's like, okay, so I'm into gay furries. That's my thing. All right. And then that's what I'm turned on by. Not that I am, but if I was, whatever. I like Flavia because she's a gay furry.
You and my salon people.
Oh my god. All right. So let's say that was just it, because that's, I grew up and certain things happened in my life, and maybe I felt most comfortable when I was watching a cartoon of a certain thing, and I had stuff going on, and maybe somewhere the wires got crossed or whatever, and this was a thing. All right, so let's say I start drawing that. Is that objectifying men, or... Because I guess you could say, is it objectifying animals? Is it objectifying men? It's like, it's just a thing that happens to be what you're into based on what happened in your life. And I don't feel like people would really point the finger at that too much in terms of, you drew a gay furry, but your furry looks a lot like a Labrador, and you wrote in the description that it's a husky.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, or something like that. It's like, no, we don't do that for deviations, but we tend to do that for just, consider it from if you're, let's say if you're a girl or even a guy and you're upset by this, consider it from the point of view of someone who just happened to be seeing this type of body type, and this happens to be the one they became attracted to. Now, the fact that a lot of people happen to share that does not make it inherently wrong, the same way as, for me personally, I don't think it's inherently wrong if someone's into gay furries. I don't think it's wrong if someone's into belly inflation. If someone, often when we're developing, this isn't always, but often what happens is you become sexually attracted to what is most commonly in your area, for instance, a lot of people have said, sometimes there's places where, let's say it's majority Latino, and then the girls tend to be more attracted to Latino guys, just because that's what they kind of grew up with. That's what they learned to associate with. Not all of them, of course, but that's a common thing that happens. So for me personally, I'm not really... I feel like I like girls that are kind of chubby-ish. I like not super obese, and I kind of like fat, and I don't really like too skinny, but that has to do with so let's just say that. So I like chubby, I like fit, and I don't really like skinny. so you could look at that and say, this guy's a jerk, and he doesn't like skinny girls, and it's like, well, not really, because that's what you're attracted to isn't a lot of choice. There's much less choice behind it than people who say you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that make it appear. Because the reality is, I didn't like skinny girls because I myself was skinny as fuck. When I was growing up, I was super underweight, and I hated myself. I hated looking in the mirror. I hated seeing that. And so I learned to like more chubby girls. I have these...
as a sign of health.
Yeah.
Just like ancient China.
I have like these very ladylike man fingers that are like my hands are like womanly hands.
But your hands are nice.
Some people might think so, but I don't. I think they're really like too overly effeminate for my taste. And so I like girls with a bit stubbier hands. I just, it's like, I don't.
They're just going to get such a weird picture about me now.
Well, it's just, the point is, it's not necessary, because I also like graceful, effeminate hands. Like, okay, that's nice, but it feels like that's something to admire from afar, but not really be with. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, so these things formed not just because of the media. It wasn't like, I watched Baywatch or whatever, and now I'm attracted to, because if that was the case, I would be attracted to blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Caucasian girls who are tall, and because it's like whatever, but that's like the most common. When I was growing up, that was the most common, like, this is what is hot, and that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah, because see, you talked about it's what people associate with, but you dissociate.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, how many people understand that? Okay, so this is one level of objectification, but take objectification a bit further and it becomes symbols. So basically, even if you talk about Buddha, for example, he is an object. He is objectified. He's stripped of his, like, dimension and whatever, and he's made into a symbol.
Yeah. That
stands for something. And same for, like, I don't know, Chinese good fortune cats or pretty much everything. It's not, and there seems to be much less issue with that because it's established.
Yeah, and even among the genders, because I draw guys with super skinny waists, and I have never, and like huge shoulders, like gigantic shoulders, tiny waist. I have never had anyone comment on the waist is wrong. And then I did read a comment of, you can't objectify men because it's different. No, I will disagree. And the reason I'll disagree is because I went to the gym, and I remember how many guys were super insecure about how they looked, and how it was all about like looking in the mirror and getting their body to look the way they wanted and controlling their physique. But I look at that, and I don't look at it just as, isn't society bad for creating unhealthy standards for beauty? Because on one hand, I could say that's a fair point. But on the other hand, I know how much that also is control. It's a control issue. It's, I want to control things. I can't control my life, but I sure as hell can control how I look. And the proof to that, for me anyway, is that when they did achieve a look that is considered physically attractive, they weren't satisfied. They kept going further. Yeah. And you'll often hear the bros before hoes type thing, and it seems to be, you don't do this for girls. Yeah. Like, maybe you did it for girls, but then after you don't do it for girls anymore. You do it because you are trying to become the best version of yourself, or whatever it is. So in that case, it's okay, it's no longer just that. But yeah, I objectify men. I objectify women.
But
I objectify
so much of art
cars.
Is objectification.
I objectify tons of things I draw. The other thing is, like you could say, but promoting it, by drawing it as a teacher, you're promoting it. By everything I say and do, I'm promoting my own experience and my own opinions. That's just, you are also doing the same thing by commenting, if that's your comment. If you are announcing to the world, I think this is wrong, it's like, yes, you are promoting your opinion. But the thing is, it doesn't make it right. Like, I don't think any of what I think is right as in this is how it should be. Because there are plenty of things wrong with things. And I mean, if you're going to get upset over these issues, you can get upset over so many issues. You can get upset that someone's waist is too thin. But what I don't understand is when people say, you know, oh, this girl is, you gave her a waist that's super thin. It's like, first of all, the girls like that exist. And I mean, not in my drawings, because I don't do drawings for that reason. I draw because I like to see what doesn't exist. But let's just say, yeah, okay, so there are girls that meet that. But look at the eyes of an anime character. Does that exist? And the reason anime characters have large eyes and small noses is because it's cute. The reason it's cute is because of neoteny, which is having the features of a baby or a child. So in that way, you're saying, well, if an anime girl is fine, because someone said, oh, here's a good character, and they talked about an anime girl who's in a schoolgirl outfit. It's like, so you would rather me sexualize a
Underage,
child with child's proportions and huge eyes so that we think of babies in a schoolgirl outfit that happens to be a sailor uniform, which happens to be militaristic, which shows the cultural domination of one culture over another, which is why they drop their own military outfits for the other. It's like, come on, this gets to the point of absurdity when this is the standard. For me, I find it very difficult to see how art and the subject, like the quality of art, is limited so much by the subject matter. Because a lot of artists, not a lot, mostly Doxy. I like some artists. There's a few hentai artists I really like because of the way they draw the figure, not because it's like, oh, super sexualized. Just that, no, the draftsmanship is good, the anatomy is good, they're very good at posing, they're very good at physics and simple coloring and simple, just things that it's like, oh, on a strictly artistic level, I like this, but I like it done well. And sometimes you find that the people who do the thing you like well happen to also do something that maybe you're not into, because I'm not really into any of the hentai art. It's not really my thing.
No.
I kind of wish it was, because I think I would...
There would be so much for you.
Yeah, I think I would make more money doing stuff. Yeah. I think it's like, fine, but no, it's not really. But I do like, oh yeah, you know how to draw well. You know how to draw the figure well. This is useful. I can learn from this, or I can at least appreciate it. At least I can admire it on a technical level. So, I don't know if any of that means anything, or if the whole comment, because it kind of makes it sound like the whole conversation's pointless. Maybe it is. Sorry for wasting your time if it was. But, yeah. And one of the reasons I objectify so much my characters, especially women, because not all of them, because some of them I definitely don't. You can see on my DeviantArt, I guess, there's a lot of characters that feel like real characters, but there are certain ones that don't, that kind of feel aloof. And it's sort of this disconnect with women type thing, like, oh, emotionally unavailable women who are kept at a distance, who are pretty but you can't really approach them. It's like, yeah, that's just psychological problem there. a lot of things, they're not what you think they are. But yeah, like you have a lot of now what's popular is eating. What was it called when they eat a lot in the I know there's a belly inflation, and there's it's not vor, is it?
It is when they eat other.
I know eating, but like getting fat, because there's a lot of fat characters around, and it's this thing that's like, well,
expansion. I think
expansion. Yeah, it's like, why is this a thing? Well, because again, often what people see around them as they reach sexual maturity is what imprints on them, and so in America especially, what is it, 1/3 of people are obese or overweight, something like that.
No, I thought obese was, but I'm not
1/3.
sure. Yeah.
And then half are overweight or something.
Yeah, some
Yeah, so
numbers,
it's like
some
that makes sense in that form. Like, yes, okay, so if you have that many overweight people, of course, people who are developing, who are young, are going to see that and going to be attracted to that. That is not that hard to believe. If you have the whole the chicks with dicks thing, if you have a society where there are a lot of women and there are a lot of people who are raised by single mothers, for instance, the mother takes the responsibility of the mother and the father. So having these two in one makes sense for someone who's going through this, and it's like, yeah, okay. So I don't know. I guess the short answer is I don't really care. I don't think it's wrong to put stuff in art, nor do I think anyone really has the right to tell someone what they can or cannot put in art. I think what's more important is people being, like, I have a problem with any living creatures being hurt. I don't like abuse. But if someone drew out there, if they had fantasies of abuse and they put it into art and only art, I don't have a problem with it. I view it like good.
It's actually good, yeah.
Yeah, at least it's there. And then for someone to say, well, but that's just making it so someone else could look at that material and get traumatized. Okay, fair enough. I think there should be warnings on things, maybe. Like, okay, this isn't for kids. But then, if you're saying, well, this promotes that. For instance, they did this a lot with video games, like violent video games. This promotes violence. Not really. The people who would go shoot people who happen to play video games of shooting people would probably shoot people even if there were no video games of shooting people.
Yeah. You can't put all the responsibility on just what stimulus is.
Yeah, because it's probably the other way around.
Yeah.
Like, people seek out things because they are disturbed.
Yeah.
Not because things are out there that are disturbing, people who are innocent look at them and then completely go, I should. Because I've seen terrible things in art and in real life and photographs and stuff. Doesn't mean I want to do those things. Doesn't mean I approve of those things. Doesn't mean it's like, oh, I saw a cop shoot a guy in a car. Now I'm going to go and shoot guys in cars because I saw it. It's like, really? Anyway. Pretty much that's it. That's all we have time for.
On that lovely note.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So thanks for listening, for the people who cared to listen. And
there were people who said these help them, and I'm really thankful. I'm glad some of you are getting stuff out of it.
Yeah. For people who feel the need to tell me I should make this or I should do this or I shouldn't do this, it's not really gonna work. I kind of don't care anymore. So, I mean, I get it. I get that. I'm glad you you feel like I'm someone you could talk to and stuff, but I'm sorry if this really disappoints you or shatters your illusion of what I am, but I don't care anymore. I really feel like it's okay to unsubscribe. It's okay. You don't have to watch my videos. And also, watching my videos doesn't give you a right to comment on what I should be doing. You can offer your opinion. That's one thing. That's completely fine. Like, oh, I'd really like it if you did this. It's like, okay.
Yeah, because I think a lot of them just want, they would like personally to see this or that or whatever.
Exactly. But I think really if it's a case of, you should draw this, it's like, no. You should draw that.
Yeah, quit with this and give us back the things you were known for.
Whatever you want, you should do that. Get good. Like, that's the whole point of getting good. So you can put your vision into the world. And then, in terms of promoting it, you promote it.
Yeah.
You make your stuff and promote it. And that'll be cool and great and awesome. So, yeah. All right. Thanks, Flavia.
You're welcome.
For being a guest, I guess.
Being a guest.
I'd also like to thank Bob Meatbag.
Bob Meatbag.
Ooh. Yeah.
Thanks,
Alright,
guys.
guys. Yeah. And thanks to the viewers. Thanks for watching.